What's up guys, it's Matt B and welcome back to the channel. And on today's video, we're going to be looking at the Garmin Forerunner 265. And before we get started, I think it's pretty safe to say the Garmin Forerunner 265 is kind of a mid-range running watch. Because of that, right off the bat, I think it probably represents the best value of Forerunners out there at the moment. Of course, that's totally debatable, but in this video, we are going to be talking about the specs and the accuracy and really what this watch can do for you. Let's get into it. This video is in partnership with the team over at Roadrunner Sports. Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me the Forerunner 265 for the purpose of review. However, they don't have any editorial control over this video and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you can pick up the Forerunner 265 at Roadrunner Sports for $450. And look, I know, $450 is still very expensive, but you get a lot. Forerunner 265 delivers on that $450. So the first thing I need to tell you about the Forerunner 265 is that it does come available in two different sizes. We have the Forerunner 265 and the 265S. The S stands for small. Now I don't have the small version to compare with the regular version, so you just have to use your imagination. But the regular Forerunner 265 measures in at 46.1 by 46.1 by 12.9 millimeters, and the 265S measures in at 41.7 by 41.7 by 12.9 millimeters. So it's a little smaller, but it's the same thickness as the regular version. Both watches come with a quick release silicone band. The 265 has an industry standard 22 millimeter band, and the 265S has an industry standard 18 millimeter band. So whichever watch you get, you know that you are going to be able to take off these bands with ease and replace them with pretty much whatever you want. Now, a great part of the Forerunner 265 is that it now comes with music storage as standard, and the 265 and 265S have 8 gigabytes of internal storage. Now, I say that it comes with music as standard. In the previous version, the 255, you were able to buy the 255 without music storage or the 255 music. So now you are able to download songs from Spotify, Amazon Music and Deezer and load them onto your watch so you can go for a run and listen to music without bringing your phone with you. Now onto the display, because this is probably the biggest update over the 255. The 265 and 265S both come with an AMOLED display. It is bright, it is beautiful, it is a treat to look at. Now the 265 has a 1.3 inch AMOLED display with 416 by 416 pixels, and the 265S has a 1.1 inch AMOLED display with 360 by 360 pixels. As far as the lens goes, the 265 has a Corning Gorilla Glass 3 lens. It is scratch resistant, and so far in the couple of months that I've been using this watch, I actually don't have any scratches on this lens, which is pretty good because I'm usually pretty clumsy with my watches. The case is a fiber reinforced polymer, which ultimately means plastic, but I actually think it looks pretty good and I've got no complaints. Now just so you know, when you do step up in price to the Forerunner 965, you do get that titanium bezel, so it looks a little more high-end than the 265, but honestly I think this looks great. And just so you can imagine what the size of this watch will look like on your wrist, this is what it looks like on my 165mm wrist, and this is what it looks like on my wife's 135mm wrist. I think this watch looks okay on my wrist, but I think the 265 small would look better on my wife. Forerunner 265 does utilize a 5-button design. We have 3 on the left and 2 on the right, but we also have a touchscreen. Touchscreen just makes interacting with the watch very easy, but most importantly, the touchscreen is disabled in the activity profiles. Now, if you do want to activate it, you can, but personally I don't want to have to worry about touching my screen when I'm on a run. The touchscreen is super responsive, just as responsive as my phone. It really makes using the watch very easy. Now, when we're talking about sports watches, we know that battery life is a big thing. Next to price, that's probably the most important thing that we're looking at. And here's the thing, there's some differences between the 265 and the 265S. Now, the 265 will last up to 13 days in smartwatch mode. So as long as you're not using the GPS and you're just using it as a watch, maybe getting notifications, however you use a smartwatch, it'll last for 13 days. But get this, the 265S will last up to 15 days in smartwatch mode. So even though it's smaller, the battery life is just a little longer. And that's probably because of the smaller display. The AMOLED display just takes a lot of battery power. So because the 265S is smaller, it's probably using less battery. Now when the 265 is in GPS only mode, it will last up to 20 hours. The 265S will last up to 24 hours. Now would be a good time to tell you that the Forerunner 265 has a multi-band GPS chip, which means not only can it connect to any of the satellite constellations, it can connect to several at the same time. Now when it's connecting to 2 satellites at the same time, that uses a little more battery power. The Forerunner 265 also includes Garmin's Sat IQ mode. Basically that's just the brains of the watch figuring out which satellite to connect to at which time. So let's say I'm running on the road and I'm going in a straight line and there's nothing to obstruct the sky above me, it's probably going to only need to connect to 1 satellite. But now let's say I'm running through a big city or I'm running in the mountains and the mountains are towering above me and they're potentially blocking out the satellite satellite signal, the 265 will know to connect to different satellites or several satellites at that time to ensure you're getting the most accurate reading. Now, Sat IQ mode is generally what I keep it on all the time. So now that I've explained that, in Sat IQ mode, the Garmin Forerunner 265 will last 16 hours. However, the 265S will last up to 18 hours in Sat IQ mode. Then if we use all systems plus the multiband, the 265 will last 14 hours, the 265S will last 15 hours. Now let's go back to music, because if you thought the AMOLED display on the 265 was a big battery suck, it's nothing compared with listening to music. So if you were to connect to regular GPS and listen to music, the Forerunner 265 will last 7 hours. The 265S will last 7.5 hours. In Sat IQ mode, if you're listening to music, the 265 will last 6.5 hours, the 265S will last 7 hours. The Forerunner 265 doesn't just connect to GPS, it has a whole host of sensors. We have an altimeter, a gyroscope, a compass, a thermometer, an accelerometer, and an ambient light sensor. If we turn it over and look at the back, you can see that Garmin is using their standard 4-prong connector pin. However, with the Forerunner 265, Garmin is now shipping their charging cord with a USB-C end. The heart rate sensor on the back of the watch is the Elevate V4. It has green lights, it has red lights. The green lights detect your heart rate, the red lights detect your pulse ox or blood oxygen, and so the Forerunner 265 will detect your heart rate, your resting heart rate. It has abnormal heart rate detection, both high and low. It's going to give you a respiration rate, it's going to give you a sleep score with insights on your sleep. It's going to let you know when it's detecting that you've got high stress. Now, of course, this isn't just a sport watch. It's a sport watch with smart features. So while it's not going to give you all the smart features that you might get from a regular smartwatch that can do sporty things, I think it pretty much does enough, or at least it does enough for me. So the Forerunner 265 does connect to your phone. It gives you notifications. It does have Garmin Pay, so when you're out at the shops and you want to pay for something, you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket to pay. You can just open your Garmin wallet, tap it against the screen, and you've paid for your items. It's nice and handy. And a great feature that I haven't used and I hope never to use is some of the safety and tracking features. So like a lot of other Garmin watches, this does feature live track, where if it's connected to your watch, you can send an email to someone and they can actually track your activity while you're doing it. The safety features takes it to another level. So if you find yourself out in the wilderness and you get into trouble and perhaps for some reason you can't reach your phone, let's say you've fallen down a crevasse and your phone is in your pocket and you just can't reach for it, but you can reach for your watch. It is very easy to just open up your watch and then you're going to scroll to the assistants. We're going to scroll down and we are going to select the person that you have already entered into your watch. We're going to press enter, and then it gives you the choice of several different options. Right now, the top one says it's an emergency, please send help. We have not an emergency, and then it says, I need help. Follow my location to find me. Now, when you select this, it's an emergency, it's going to beep several times. It's going to count down. It's going to give you an option if you want to cancel it. So let's go ahead and cancel this right now, because I've already tested this several times with my wife before I actually made this video, and she receives both an email and a text message saying I'm in trouble. Actually, this is what it looks like. Once you activate that request for assistance, the watch is going to ask you, do you want to cancel it? When you do that, it sends a follow-up text message letting your person know that no further assistance is required. Pretty handy. Now, I've been using this watch for all my activities since I got it, but it's funny that one of my favorite things about this watch is not actually tracking activities. It's the morning report. Now, the morning report, as you would imagine, comes out every morning, and it gives you a brief data summary of your night and how to approach the day. Now, it's totally configurable, so you can add the information that you want or take away information that you don't need, but I want my morning report to show me how I slept, my body battery, my training readiness, suggested workouts, my HRV status, and the weather. And now would be a good time to talk about body battery. Now, the 265 does have the body battery feature, and basically the watch interprets your body as a battery, as a power bank. And as you know, when you use a battery, that power goes down, and when you recharge it, the power goes back up. And the same thing with the body battery. After you sleep, your body battery has been recharged and the number goes up, and then after you work out, you will see the number decrease. All right, I've been talking for a long time about the features that this watch has before we've actually got to the sports, but now we've got to the sports. And look, this watch tracks a lot of sports, and I don't want to offend anyone, but let's just stick to the primary sports. And by primary sports, I mean running, swimming, and biking, especially running, because that's kind of my sport. And look, I know pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States, and the 265 does track that. So I'm sorry, I guess pickleball is a primary sport. As far as running goes, it tracks all the runs, running, trail running, track running. It does have the track running feature. So when you go to the track, you're going to do a couple of laps just so the watch can configure itself. And then when you start your workout on the track, it's going to snap that line in your GPS track so you get a nice tight line. You can also track ultra running, which is very similar to regular running, only more ultra. Now, I know I already told you that it does track trail running, but this is kind of important because having a trail running feature on your watch is vital if you run on both roads and trails. Because when you're running on the road, you have a lot less resistance. You get to kind of set your pace and forget it and just run. And then the watch interprets all that data and it gives you your VO2 max. And it also bases your race prediction times off of that VO2 max, which you got by running on the road. As far as race prediction times, we do get predictions for 5K, 10K, half marathon, and the marathon. But what happens if you're running on the trail and you're running up a mountain and you're jumping over logs, or it's super sandy and you're crossing rivers and all that stuff that goes into trail running? Well, because we have a trail running mode, that means the Forerunner 265 isn't going to ding you because you're running a little slower on tougher conditions. It can tell the difference. Moreover, you will get a road running VO2 max and a trail running VO2 max on the Forerunner 265. If you find yourself running on a treadmill, the 265 will track that. If you find yourself running on an indoor track, the 265 will also track that. The biking sport profile is also pretty good, but we don't just have regular biking. We've got biking, indoor biking, mountain biking, e-mountain biking, and e-biking. The Forerunner 265 also tracks swimming, both pool swimming and open water swimming. And this open water swimming is also a big deal. So we covered running, biking, and swimming, but what happens when you put those together? You get triathlon. The Forerunner 265 does have triathlon mode and multisport mode. Now, the Forerunner 265 also has a lot of run dynamics built into it, so you are going to be able to get a lot of data. Now, remember from earlier that we do have a barometric altimeter. That also means that the Forerunner 265 is going to have wrist-based power. It's also going to detect your cadence, your vertical oscillation, your stride length, the ratio. The ratio is between vertical oscillation and stride length to determine how efficient you are, and your ground contact time. Now, the only thing that you will need the HRM chest strap for is if you want to detect your ground contact time balance, so how much time you're spending on each foot. Now, the 265 does have navigation to an extent. What it doesn't have is maps. So we've got very basic navigation features, but we do have a breadcrumb trail. It also features back to start, so it's unlikely you're going to get lost while wearing this watch. Now, you can download courses or race courses to the watch, and then you can do a lot with that. You can see the course on the watch, but actually it turns out to just be a green line on a black screen. You can see an elevation profile of the course, and because you can put courses on the watch, you can also use Garmin's Pace Pro feature. Basically, that allows you to design how you're going to pace your race. Now, this can be done on the watch or via the app, but on the app, you get to tweak it a little more. So let's use the example of the Boston Marathon. First of all, you're going to have to get the GPX file and load it onto your Garmin Connect app. And once it's in there, it's going to allow you to change how you want to run the race. So this toggle right here, if I move it to the left, it's going to give me a more positive split. If I move it to the right, it's going to give me a little bit more of a negative split. I can also change how I want to charge the hills. I can go easy on the hills or I can go a little harder. Right now you can see it's going a little harder, but if I wanted to make the hills easier, I can just set that toggle back a little bit further. But let's keep it charging the hills. Then if you scroll down, you're going to see all the different splits for the different miles of your race. And in this instance, my goal for the Boston Marathon is 4 hours. So what I'm going to do is hit that button. I am going to send it to the 265. And now when I go to the run profile, press the left-hand button, scroll down to training, go to Pace Pro plans. Let's go to this Boston Marathon at 4 hours. We're going to click Use Plan. Yes, we want course navigation. And now we're ready to go. Just like that, the Forerunner 265 is going to let me know how fast I need to run each mile of the Boston Marathon. Okay, now let's move over to looking at some accuracy readings, or more importantly, how the watch compares to other watches on the market that you may be considering. So in these examples, I'm going to be comparing the Forerunner 265 with the Chorus Apex 2 Pro, the Polar Pacer Pro, and the Apple Watch Ultra. And let's get started with a macro perspective, as in total distance of what these watches are recording. On this watch, the Polar Pacer Pro measured 10.17 miles, the Apex 2 Pro measured 10.12 miles, Forerunner 265 measured 10.07 miles, and the Apple Watch Ultra measured 9.98 miles. In this second example, the Polar Pacer Pro measured 10.37 miles, the Apex 2 Pro measured 10.33 miles, Forerunner 265 measured 10.31 miles, and the Apple Watch Ultra measured 10.24 miles. And I show you this to show you really all the watches are very much in line. Now, there may be a bit of a spread from the watch that measured the least, which was the Apple Watch Ultra, and the watch that measured the longest distance, which was the Polar Pacer Pro. But if you notice, the Forerunner 265 is always right there in the middle. So I think that's a pretty good sign that the Forerunner 265 is measuring pretty accurately, at least when we compare it to other watches. Now let's see how it does compared to other watches with measuring sleep. Now, measuring sleep is always a bit tricky, and I certainly wouldn't bet anything that these recordings are correct, at least as far as the sleep stages, deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep. But if we look at it as a whole, in this first example, the Garmin Forerunner 265 measured my sleep at 7 hours and 35 minutes. The Polar Pacer Pro was a minute less at 7 hours and 34 minutes. The Apple Watch Ultra measured 7 hours and 32 minutes. And the Apex 2 Pro measured 7 hours and 28 minutes. All very close. In this second example, the Polar Pacer Pro measured 9 hours and 4 minutes. The Apex 2 Pro measured 8 hours and 40 minutes. So a bit of a spread there. The Apple Watch Ultra measured 8 hours and 28 minutes. And the Garmin Forerunner 265 measured 8 hours and 27 minutes. Now in this instance, I know that the Polar Pacer Pro at 9 hours and 4 minutes was wrong. I was aware enough of when I went to bed and when I woke up to know that that wasn't the case. So in this case, I will go with the Forerunner 265 and think that that is pretty accurate as to what I slept that night. Now let's look at some heart rate comparisons of the same watches. And on your screen right now, you're seeing, and I think this was a great example, but you're seeing a pretty steady state run. You're seeing a stop right here. I pick up the pace again, and then at the end of the run, I pick up the pace and I include some strides. Now these are 30-second strides, so it's a very quick test of my heart rate going up and then trying to get it come down again before the next interval. But it seems pretty clear that all the watches are very, very similar. There is a little bit of something down here where the Forerunner 265 drops early a little when I stopped. It comes up a couple of beats and then it drops out for the actual stop, but then they all pick up the heart rate at exactly the same time, or at least very close. I don't think this is anything to really pick apart. I think these are all very similar. The same thing goes when I go to pick up the pace for these strides. Now, if we roll it along, we can see they all pretty much follow the same trend, except right here, it looks like the chorus drops out by a couple of beats. The Forerunner 265 is kind of in the middle between the chorus and the Polar Pacer Pro and the Apple Watch Ultra. Then when we get up here, it looks like the Polar Pacer Pro peaks a little higher than the other watches, and that seems to be the only anomaly. Everything else seems to be trending very similar. I'm looking at this little area right here where the Forerunner 265 is 158, but all the other comparable watches are just a couple of beats lower, so I don't think that's really anything to worry about when we're looking at comparative data. All in all, this looks pretty fantastic. On your screen right now is a section of a run that I chose because it's a little all over the place, but not really for the Forerunner 265. It was my Apple Watch that was dropping out in places. But this section of the run right here was run at a tempo pace. So a lot of the times when our cadence picks up, when we're running a little harder, sometimes the optical heart rate sensors can pick up our cadence and mistake our cadence for our heart rate. That wasn't the case in this case, but it looks like in this case the Forerunner 265 is the purple, and the only anomaly I'm seeing is right here where the Forerunner 265 looks like it peaked out at 162 for, not long, maybe, 10 seconds before it dropped right back down. And then if we scroll along, it looks like everything except for the Apple Watch Ultra is all very much in line. Got a couple instances right here where the chorus peaks just a little bit. And actually right here, we can see that the Forerunner 265 drops out for just a second before immediately climbing back up along the line with the other watches. So we got a little valley right here and a little peak over here. But let's just keep this in perspective and look at the actual numbers. On this peak, the Forerunner 265 was 162, where the chorus was 155, the Polar Pacer Pro was 152. So we're looking between 10 and 7 beats a minute off. And then right here in this valley where the Forerunner 265 drops down, the 265 is at 150 beats a minute, the Polar Pacer Pro is 160, and the chorus is actually at a peak above everything else at 164. Now, all that to say that wrist-based heart rate monitors are notoriously temperamental. Whether they pick up your heart rate depends on a lot of factors. It can depend on your skin color, it can depend on how tight you are wearing the watch. Light is the enemy of optical heart rate sensors, so if you're not wearing your watch tight enough and light gets in there, it can disturb the readings. And then, as we mentioned, cadence can also affect it sometimes. But all in all, the heart rate reading, the Elevate V4 heart rate sensor on the Forerunner 265 is pretty good. Definitely acceptable. Now let's take a look at some tracking data, because this is fairly interesting and I want to draw your attention to this. And we can see that 3 of the lines are very similar to each other. In the center of your screen, you can see that I'm running on the left side of the road, or it's actually the right side of the road because I'm actually running south in this instance. And 3 of the watches are actually quite similar in their course, and they seem to be hugging this corner as I come around here. The only one that seems to be off is this pink line, and that's the Polar. But as we're not analyzing the Polar's data, we're not going to look too far into that. And then as we come around this neighborhood, I am continuing to run on the right side of the road, the Forerunner 265 appears to be very stable, and it seems to be putting me within just a foot or two of where I was actually running, which is very impressive. This right here is even more impressive. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more here because this is a great example right here. This is a little island and I am on the right side of it, and it seems to me that the Forerunner 265 is exactly where I ran on this road. And then just as the line suggests, when I come around, I take a left on this Eagles Watch Way, and now I'm actually running on the left side of the road, and that is exactly where the Forerunner 265 puts me. So all in all, in my testing, the GPS accuracy of the Forerunner 265 seems to be extremely accurate. I've got absolutely no problems with it. And even though there was a couple of drops and one peak in the heart rate data from the 265, I still have no issues with it. Those variations in my heart rate were very small comparatively. And when you compare several different watches across a whole run, the more you zoom in, the more you're going to see all of them kind of going like this rather than having one smooth line. Okay, so now I want to hear from you. I want to know, which is your GPS watch of choice? Do you use Garmin? Do you use some other brand? And are you thinking about picking up the Forerunner 265? I think the watch's specs and the accuracy make it a pretty good deal at $450. What do you think? All right, it's Matt B. This has been my review of Garmin's Forerunner 265. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.